Hey guys, it's Sarah, and today's BookList Thursday. So this is a video series that Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library and I do every week. And every week we bring you some sort of list surrounding books that we want to talk about. And for the whole month of November, we have been doing genres that we're thankful for. And all surrounding the whole thing of Thanksgiving, which is today. So to all of my US friends, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday. And I saved the best for last. Now, here's why. I don't consider this genre my favorite. I would say thrillers are my favorite. But this genre is the one where when I was picking books off my shelves for some of my favorites, I could not stop. I was just, that's a favorite. This is a favorite. This is a favorite. I have to talk about this one. And so that was interesting. And it probably has more books on my shelves that I want to read. So is it my favorite? I don't know. Probably not, because I'm still getting into the genre. I'm not like a full diehard, this is all that I read thing. That's, still more on the thriller side, I think. But I'm getting more into it. I've gotten a lot more into it this year, and I want to get a lot more into it next year as well. I have some big plans for this genre. But some of my favorite books are in here, so it's interesting. That genre is fantasy. This is a great genre, and I'm not going to tell you what it is. It's fantasy. This is going to include adult and young adult fantasy, I believe. Yeah. And so I do have like 6 of my favorites and then 2 that I really want to read. But I could have put on a blindfold and picked something and I would have been good to go. So there is that. Now, all of these are series, because that's what fantasy is. Fantasy is, they're series. They are, if there's a standalone fantasy, it's so incredibly rare. They do exist, but it's very rare. They're usually at least a trilogy. So all of these are included in that. A lot of these, I've only read the first book in the series, but oh my gosh, were they amazing. And I can't wait to read the rest of them. Okay, we'll talk about that later. All right. So the first one that I want to talk about is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. Anything by Brandon Sanderson at this point, I've only read 2 of his books, but they were amazing. This one was my favorite as of right now. And so this is the first book in the Mistborn trilogy. And the Mistborn trilogy, the first book is actually called The Final Empire. And oh my gosh, this world is so complicated, but he wrote it in a way that I understood it completely. And he didn't dumb it down either. But the way that he wrote it was really brilliant, because it made a fantasy newbie like me completely understand what was going on, and I was able to follow it no problem. But it didn't feel like it was watered down at all. So this follows a world where the bad guy has won. There has already been a war. This land has been conquered. The bad guy won, and he's in power. Because of that, people are pretty much treated like slaves. And we're following a group of people who are trying to lead a rebellion to overthrow him and take him down, basically. And the really cool thing about this world is the magic system. Magic, okay. Magic is controlled or determined by the consumption of metals. We're talking like silver, copper, gold, nickel, iron, anything metallic that you ingest that's what gives you your powers. And different metals give you different types of powers. Not everybody can ingest all the metals. Certain people can only ingest one kind of metal or 2 kinds of metals. Mistborn can ingest anything, and they can use that as their power. So they are very powerful and very dangerous. And just the different ways that the metal can be manipulated is so really cool. It's so cool. I can't even describe it. I just remember reading this and just being in awe of everything. I'm like, this is so amazing. And so you're following this group of people who are, trying to plan this attack against the leader. And it was fantastic. And it was heartbreaking. He did break my heart in this one. And I do want to reread this first book and then finish the trilogy. that's going to be a goal of mine next year for sure, because I have the other 2 books. Like, I got all 3 of them together, and I don't know why I haven't just read all 3 of them back to back, but I did read this first one and just loved it so much to the point where I want to reread it. And I do. Like, yeah. So loved it. This next one is a young adult that I just read recently, and that is Psyched by Neil Shusterman. Okay. This is the first book in the trilogy as well. The 3rd book just came out. I do have the first 2. Don't have the 3rd one yet, but okay. This one is set in a future world. It's our world. But in the future, society has figured out a way to conquer death. So there is no death from car accidents. There's no diseases. There's no cancer. There's no dying of old age. Nothing. The only thing that can actually kill you is if a scythe decides that you're done here and they are going to glean you, which is what they call killing, gleaning. Now, these scythes are chosen after going through some trials to prove that they can do this job and that they have what it takes to do it. So we are following our 2 main characters who are both chosen to be an apprentice to a scythe. And each scythe gets to choose apprentices every year, and they are, trained. They go through all the training and all the things, and then they're put up before a board and have to prove themselves. Some are chosen, some are not. And they have to prove themselves that they can do this job. Now, the biggest thing that was so interesting in this one was what goes into the decision-making process on who is going to be gleaned and who isn't. It's so interesting. It's very political. It's very much, the sides have to answer for their actions. They can't just go around killing whoever they want to. They have to answer to their numbers. They have to answer to the demographics. They have to answer to all sorts of things. So it was so interesting, and I loved every single word of it. I really, really did. I loved the characters. There's a lot of hazy things that happen that kind of make you question what you would do in that situation. There's some gray areas. There is a really bad villain in here who is also a scythe, and it's fantastic. That's all I can say. I'm so excited to move on and read Thunderhead soon. And then I will absolutely be picking up The Toll at some point as well. But I absolutely loved this. Neil Shusterman's writing was fantastic. And I loved every word. Next one I have here is another young adult, and that is Furyborn by Claire Legrand. Claire Legrand is quickly becoming a favorite author for me. Like, I think I've officially said she's one of my favorite authors because everything I've read from her so far, I've given 5 stars. Including this one. So this is the first book in the Empyrean trilogy, and book number 2 is out. I have it on my Kindle. I haven't read it yet. And then the 3rd book is going to be coming out as well. But I loved this book. So this one is a dual timeline, and it follows 2 different queens in 2 different times. And one of them is basically the queen of death, and one of them is the queen of life, basically, is like probably the best way I can put it. I think one's like a sun queen and one's a blood queen, something like that. And you're going back and forth between the 2 timelines, and these are like thousands of years apart. So it's not like 10 years later. No, it's like 1,000 years later. And you see what each one of them is going through in very different realities and very different times. And you see how they're kind of tested in the same ways. You are starting to kind of figure out which one is going to be which. And they both know that there's a prophecy like that. And it's so fascinating. I really liked the earlier timeline a little bit better than the newer timeline, but just her writing is fantastic, and it kept me engaged the entire time. A lot of things happen in here, like a whole lot, and I loved it, and I can't wait to read the next one as well. I do have it on my Kindle, like I said, and I just haven't picked it up yet. But I absolutely love this, and it took me by surprise that I love this one so much, but it was a total 5-star. All right, the next one that I have is also a young adult, and it's a duology, so there's only 2 of these books, but that is Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. Okay, I'm going to hug it. I'm going to hug it while I talk about this book because it was so beautiful. This one follows our main character. His name is Laszlo Strange, and he is a librarian. And he is living in this world where there is kind of this mythical place called Weep. And he knows about this place. He's obsessed with it. He's always wanted to visit. He loves everything about it and all the mysteries behind it. And he wants to, go there and discover the mysteries and all these things. However, everybody in his community has pretty much lost their own memories of this place. And so they don't even feel like it's a real place anymore. They feel like it's just some myth and like it was never real and all those things. But he knows better. One day, a caravan of people go through his town, and they are looking for people to travel with them to Weep because there's issues happening. They need help. They need as many people as they can take with them to help them. And Laszlo was like, hello, I volunteer as tribute. He does have to prove himself to get onto this caravan, but he does make it. And the way that he made it is fantastic, by the way. And he ends up going. So you see him becoming friends with some of the citizens from Weep and, traveling with people from his own community as well that he maybe didn't know quite so well before. And so they go to this place. He's finally able to see it. And then, of course, nothing is as he imagined it would be. Because there is this really large structure that is kind of built into the mountain above their city. And it really just like overpowers everything and takes over everything. And that is because of a war that had happened before. And the people who are living in there are very dangerous people, and they're kind of considered villains, and they just pose a constant threat to the village down below. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Okay. Number one, we have to talk about Laini Taylor's writing because it is very flowery, which I don't always get along with. But it works for me in this one. It works for me with her. I don't know what it is, but it was beautiful. It really just was. It really just struck a chord with me, and it was just gorgeous. And I could very easily see everything that was happening. There were some really beautiful dream sequences in here that were very important to the story, and they were so magical. I could just, oh my gosh, I just ate it up. I loved it. It's very complex, and it's, oh gosh, I don't know. I don't even have all the words for this, but it was beautiful. I absolutely loved it. It was a surprise favorite of mine last year, and I loved every word. It was beautiful. All right, let's switch gears back to adult with Jay Kristoff, who has my whole heart. This is Nevernight. This is the first book in the Nevernight trilogy, which I own the entire trilogy now because Dark Dawn just came out a couple months ago. And I still only ever read the first one. But, oh my gosh, this book. Not for the faint of heart. I will tell you that. This book is very violent. It's very graphic. It's fantastic. So this follows our main character. Her name is Mia. She has been brought up without a family because her family was killed by the government. And most likely for a reason that's not okay. And she has spent her entire childhood wanting to plot revenge against the government for killing her father. Now, she ends up being taken in by somebody who gets her into an assassin school, and she is there to learn how to kill people and how to be sneaky so that she can kill the people who wrongfully killed her father. So she's just full of revenge, right? Oh my gosh, it's so good. So in this one, you see her at the assassin school, which is one of my favorite things. It's just assassin, school setting, trials. Yes, please. I love that kind of stuff. And these trials are brutal. I mean, people die in these trials because you're here to kill people. We're not going to go easy on you, right? Mia is very smart. She's incredibly smart. And you see that come out in here. Because there were some times that I'm sitting here reading going, what? is this a smart idea? Oh, no, yeah, no, okay, that is a smart idea. Good for you. So good, like just so good and so creative. And the humor in here is on point. Jay Kristoff gets me. He gets me. His humor is just like one of my favorite things in books right now. I cannot get enough of it. He is so funny. Now, this is the one that has a lot of footnotes in it, which at first threw me off. I was like, why are there so many footnotes? Like there was a footnote that took up half the page one time. A lot of that is for the world building, which some of it makes a lot of sense. A couple of them I kind of skipped over, like that's not really important. Some of them made me laugh out loud so bad because it was just like a little funny thing to put in there and it was so good. So I didn't mind the footnotes after a while. It does take a little bit of getting used to though. So just fair warning on that one. But oh my gosh, I loved it so much. And I really want to read the other two. But this is another one that I want to reread and then binge read the whole thing. So that will be happening. But yeah, love it. Okay, one more favorite, another one that I've read this year, and I can't not mention it. I can't not mention this book. It's Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. This was one of my most intimidating books on my TBR. And I read it. It took me a whole month. An entire month to read this book because it is very complex. It is very dense. If you've read it, you know. If you've seen the TV shows, you know how complex this world is. And I think watching the TV show for me first helped me with the book because I think if I went into this cold without knowing anything about Game of Thrones, I don't think I would have been able to enjoy it as much as I did. But because I already knew the characters, I already knew what they look like and who they were and what house they belonged to and where they were in the world. I think that helped my enjoyment of it. That being said, it was still brilliant and beautifully written. And it was a lot easier to read than I thought it was going to be. I thought the language was going to be hard for me to read. No, like don't let that scare you off. It was fine. It's just a lot. It's a lot to take in. Plan to take your time with it, but it's worth it. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I don't need to explain this to you. Everybody knows what Game of Thrones is. If it's sitting on your shelf and you're scared of it, please don't be. Give yourself time. Like just know that it's not going to be something you read in a week. If it is, good for you. Like I said, it took me an entire month to read this book, but so worth it. It was fantastic. I did watch the entire TV series this year and loved every minute of it. So I'm definitely reading through the books now. I know that at a certain point in these books, it's different than the TV show. This one is exactly like season one, like on point in season one. So if you've watched season one and you want to read the book, that's what this is. And I loved revisiting it sometimes. There were a couple of deaths I had to revisit that I didn't want to revisit. It's one of those like, but this time it won't happen. He's not going to die, right? No, they still die. So there was that. I didn't enjoy that part of it very much, but so good. Like, it's just brilliant. What he came up with is, I can't even put into words. So yeah. And speaking of Game of Thrones, say hello to my Daenerys pop. Yep, Daenerys on the fiery Drogon. Josh got it for me. It's fantastic. Okay, so 2 other books that are on my shelf that I really want to read. Again, I could have put on a blindfold and picked them and it would have been fine. But I went ahead and picked up The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. This one, I'm not 100% sure what it's about. I know it has something to do with like the seasons and that's how time passes or something. And I'm hearing it's very complicated and very political and really interesting. And it's won like a million awards. I think all 3 books in this trilogy have won awards. So that's good. But yeah, I've heard enough about it that I really want to read it. I have not really seen anyone talk about this book without praising it. So it's on my shelves. And the last one to talk about that I want to read is Red Sister by Mark Lawrence. This is book number 1 in the Ancestor trilogy. This is a book that has been, or a trilogy that has been recommended to me a lot because Assassins, a school, I think, and like they're nuns. Okay, I'm in. And I've heard amazing things about it. So definitely would like to read this. Mark Lawrence is an author that I want to read. I've heard really good things about his books in general. And this is one that just like really popped up on my radar. All right, guys, that is it for fantasy. So I couldn't stop. I really couldn't. I'm really getting much more into the genre, and I'm just reading so many really, really good ones that I'm just loving them. All right, I want your fantasy recommendations down below. Let me know what your favorites are. If I have some on my shelves, maybe I'll bump them up on my list to read sooner rather than later. And if there's any that I haven't heard of, I would love to know that as well, so I can be on the lookout for those. But definitely give me those suggestions down below. And make sure you go check out Lindsay's today and see what genre she's going to end the month with. I'm really excited to see what that's going to be. And again, for everyone in the US, happy Thanksgiving. I hope you are enjoying your families and all that good stuff, and have a wonderful and safe weekend. And we will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.